Recording now.
Cool.
Okay, Tom, thank you very much for your interest in the survey. I saw that you confirmed you submitted a survey, so thank you very much for the time there.
Happy to help.
Additionally, I would like to help and understand myself on how you chose, these options in terms of what you implemented for different customers, what kind of system KPIs and business KPIs really, you see people care about and it matters, and how
hmm
you generally kind of measure them technically also. So if that helps, probably it will help me to further extend that in my thesis.
hmm So I've actually implemented a lot of different implementations over the years. I've worked in this field for at least 16, 17 years, in which I've been implementing different solutions across the globe. And when it comes to metrics, I mean, every company thinks they're very unique, but there's a lot of metrics that repeat themselves and are taken really to heart. And most of them treat the question of utilization and efficiency of service.
Right,
And in some cases, maybe sort of a secondary is customer satisfaction. And in other businesses, there's also issues with penalties. So penalties are a big motivator as well.
right,
Things like coming after the SLA, the agreed upon level of service.
right,
And these are cases, for example, when you work for telephone company or electricity company. These are sort of critical services that have external monitoring. Also true to other industries, sort of emergency industries. I've also done gas companies, and I've done even a fire department with
oh,
supervisors in fire department. Yes.
they
And
do use field service solutions. I haven't heard of anyone.
so yeah, I mean, what they were doing was mainly inspections towards
Oh, okay,
compliancy to standards. But then, if they also have an emergency, they also need to get someone on site, even if it's not yet treated, very
mm-hmm.
fast. So that's sort of compliancy to coverage. And this is also in the gas industry. They have to be there within less than half an hour to have someone. This is a goal that, like, 85% of the time, you should arrive within half an hour. So this is a sort of
Right,
metric of quality that a city council can put on a department that deals with these sort of emergency services, as because they're giving a single person a monopoly, right? So you have a monopoly, you have to
correct,
supervise the level of care, and they have to really be hurt if they don't give the level of care that's needed for the city, because it's, in this case, in gas, it's typically a fire hazard. So connecting those
right,
two
right,
industries between fire departments and gas companies, that's something that we haven't done, like system to system integration, but really they're both very but again, this is a unique business. Let's say most of my businesses that I've implemented are more like telecom, where there aren't a lot of emergencies, so telephone companies, as well as I've done electricity companies. Electricity companies do have some like regulations around how do you care, who gives care, what sort of service, how fast is the service. I've also done sort of appliances, so insurance companies and technical technicians that fix home appliances, and their
right,
contracts a lot of time also have specific fines for specific types of. So let's say that's the third category, right? So the first that's very common is travel, and supervising the travel that's done on a daily basis by the engineers. Second is that question of customer service, so how quickly, and third is maybe penalties that sometimes come in. Um, but in most cases, travel and response time are, let's say, the lead causes. Um, and part of that is also how they employ their engineers, right? How efficient their
correct,
workforce is
correct.
working.
So when you talk about travel costs, do they care about travel for the first job, last job, or the overall travel? There could be travel for long distances like rural areas and urban. I talked to other participants also, and they shared,
Yeah.
concerns around density. Where you're going for remote work, there you can have a lot of travel versus city where you can have less travel.
So yeah. So around travel, I mean, a metric that all companies want to know is how much travel they're doing, and in order to make it something that you can compare between companies and you can compare between weeks, you have to talk about average travel. There are some specifications to average travel, things like do you or don't you include in. So when you do average travel, you take the sum of travel, you divide it by the number of works you do. There is
Right.
sometimes questions if it's a same site, if you're staying at the location between two orders, does that lower your average or is that just an expected behavior? If you're on site, continue serving on site. So, for example, that's a bit of a fine print, but average travel is a very typical metric that's always tracked. There are companies that also want to know average distance or total distance because it's affiliated with some of the car costs. So while average travel time and overall travel time is interesting for employee and productivity, so this is the first step to utilization.
Right. Right.
The next thing is the cost of service, and some of the cost of service is sometimes looked at. I know that in the systems that I implement, we do not minimize the distances because if you have, say, a ring road around the city that allows you to arrive earlier, then we would prefer that you take the ring road, you arrive earlier, even though um, it's a longer distance, it keeps the engineer more productive instead of going through the downtown, through the middle of the town, stopping at stoplights and being delayed.
Right.
Although that is
Highway versus city
less
road.
abusive of the cars, but it's first of all a very uncomfortable sort of experience for the employee, and it also is very non-productive. They're much more productive in bringing revenue, meeting SLAs when you use faster roads, and sometimes those are longer. So distances, for example, is a metric that sometimes I get asked about, but I definitely do not see it as a key business. Your business is not to
Right.
minimize miles. Your key business is to give service. And
Right.
really,
Right.
companies need, I try to lead them to that understanding that they want to talk about productivity, they want to talk about achieving customer satisfaction and monitor the costs and be aware of the costs and understand their utilization of the resources. But distance, for example, is a really bad metric for that.
And all these implementations that you have done for various customers with various products, have they been like cloud based or on prem? Have you seen a trend or any benefit
Mhm.
from
So
these technologies?
I've yeah, I've started very early. So in 2007, more or less, was the first time I joined in implementation. I think my first implementation was Oklahoma City Council, um, and what we were, I can't remember actually what was their lead metric, um, but I definitely remember that we did some metric extraction methods. So we took metrics as we were going. A lot of times the businesses don't have metrics, by the way. So a lot of times they know that they run a business and they know that they get complaints from the field. We don't have enough personnel. And they allocate more personnel, or they have a field manager that sort of works close to the engineers and he tries to measure their effectiveness, their efficiency. And as long as work is being done, they can continue employing and so forth. So a lot of businesses actually you approach, they don't have metrics in place um, until they start automating. So when I come in
So,
and you asked about on-prem and cloud, I definitely started with systems that were on-prem because cloud was not very popular.
hmm,
People did not trust the cloud, and over the years, a lot of things have moved into the cloud. Definitely in our industry, the solutions that were on-prem required maintenance and updates and bug fixes, and all that was just too problematic and costly. And it took a
correct.
while for the industry to do it. I think the other bottleneck that was opened up was the reliability of internet. So
Correct.
if in 2006, 2007, this is a critical system. If you wake up in the morning and you don't know what to do with your resources, you have 100 or maybe even 1,000. I think the biggest implementation I worked on was 16,000, a company in Brazil, and
Great.
in the telephony company, yes, a telephony company in Brazil. Um,
Hmm.
and also another solution was 10,000 people in Germany, although divided into two separate systems, one more business oriented, one more personal home telephony implemented. Um, And these big services, if they have a moment down, if their internet is not reliable, if the servers are not working, they would just not be able to run. So let's say
Correct.
those, the German company specifically also has a lot of concern about privacy of customer information. They're really, this is a big topic in Germany because of their dotted history about um, around World War II and the treatments of specific people. The whole idea of lists of people in the
Hmm.
wrong hands with identification information is a very, very big topic in Germany.
Correct.
Privacy is considered super important in Germany. So for them, for example, to start trusting the cloud took a long time. And even now, as they moved from on-prem, they moved to cloud, they moved to their own specific cloud. So they actually
Correct.
will continue maintaining their infrastructure as an independent cloud, and they asked us to implement in their cloud, which was not technically possible. So we actually, part of the reason I think we lost this customer was because they have not made that transition to fully support and feel comfortable with security on the cloud, but they really are the exception. The majority of companies are moving to the clouds. I mean, even they moved to a cloud, but they wanted their own cloud. And
Correct.
other companies are moving to the cloud as well. Most services these days have that cloud option, if not the only option for implementation. In
So, do
as
you
a
see any kind of constraint when it comes to capturing, system metrics from on-prem solution versus cloud solution, and how you could kind of make sense and relate it to a business KPI? Has that changed over, or is that the same in terms of
um,
accessing limited information or something? I heard from other participants as well.
I, I think that the
Because from one of the participants, I heard that now with cloud-based solutions, they have a lot of reports and charts available that can show up
yeah.
almost a lot of information
So
without writing any custom code or any customization. But then a lot of things that they could do well in some, say, database queries, that is not available on cloud. So
yeah,
do you
that's
have you
exactly
seen
where
that
my
challenge?
thought was. Um, that's where my thought was when you asked about metrics on cloud or metrics on prem. Um, the metrics on cloud have to go through what the cloud offering gives you access to. So in a way, with the on-prem, you had a bit more silos of information because only specific people, I mean, you as a business owner are running the business. So on one hand, you can create your own mechanisms for surveillance, right? If you want to start surveillancing who accessed what file, who is reading the information collected by our systems for statistics, those sort of things you can have full access to. You decide whatever you want with on-prem. With cloud, you have to
Correct.
rely on the services that we provide for you. On the other hand, the
Correct.
business in cloud is more standardized. So
Right.
so proposals for taking metrics, and specifically in the system we implement, we have some standard metrics, standard tools that we use in order to collect metrics. We have a higher connectivity to standard business tools. So these days, so much businesses, not just in our industry, have implementations in the cloud, and all of them need supervision or metrics for them. So you have companies that are helping them decipher their logs. You have companies that are there just to keep the logs. You have companies that are creating very like wonderful visualization for metrics. All these companies are looking for cloud businesses and implementing in clouds because they want that connectivity. And if your business is already on the cloud, it's already remotely connected to you. It can easily be also remotely connected to other suppliers like
Correct. Correct.
Tableau. So Tableau is a great company. It's part of the. So I specifically work for Salesforce, and we own Tableau. And Tableau has both a server implementation, an independent server. You can buy it and locate it, but the majority of clients and the offering that we really push is towards cloud implementation because you're already in the cloud. So if you're on Amazon, for example, you're already using things like Fire Hydrant data processor to take your information in. You're already using Amazon storage spaces. You're already
Correct.
in the family. You're already using BigQuery. You're already using, so you have a lot of these tools that supplement each other, and it's easier
Correct.
to get your data around. So with Tableau, which has a really good visualization aspect to it and knows to connect to a lot of data sources, all this connectivity is not possible to do on-prem. So you have a
Correct.
data lake, you have other data suppliers that you work with. Maybe you have some marketing company that supplies you with entity or profiling of specific users that are interacting with you. All their services are offered on cloud. They're not offered on prem. So
Correct.
collecting metrics and integration on cloud is much more. It's much easier than doing it
Yeah.
on-prem. On-prem, you're the owner, but you have to take all the responsibility to extract the metrics, track them, move them. You don't have a lot of tools for connectivity between them for real-time updates. Um, it,
Right.
it leaves you behind when it comes to taking reports and metrics. You still
No, this is very
continuing to do
informative.
so on-prem.
No, this is great. This is very informative. In fact, I did not touch on all these aspects, but I would ensure I include this in my research thesis as well. But a very great guidance on this one. So coming back to the KPIs,
Hmm.
you said that mostly businesses have talked about the travel cost or the
Yes.
response time. Do they also care about? So let's first talk about how
Yes.
they have generally
Hmm.
measured it in terms of system KPI. Do they like? I know now that you said already they will have some kind of report that will generate it and get the data
Hmm.
on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Uh, do they also wish to prioritize maybe resource preferences or skills or any other parameter or any other KPI along with these KPIs? Have
So
you
I
seen
think
a
the
business who cares about maybe not travel but ensuring you get the skill set? For example, healthcare, you have to send a doctor irrespective of travel they take, right?
So yes, I mean skill set is almost a rule typically. So you have to send qualified people. The only exception I had for that, like when I say a rule, that means that this is mandatory, right? If you're in the electricity
Right,
business and you send someone that isn't an electrician, you are going to have a lot of mistakes and a lot of problems. If you're a nurse
correct.
and you don't a nursing company and you don't send a qualified nurse, but a practitioner
Oh,
like
yes.
then you're going to be in trouble for specific procedures, right? You can't do it's illegal even to do specific procedures. So skill set is almost always mandatory. Maybe the one exception to that is actually in industries where they have very tight SLA and the
Hmm.
SLA doesn't dictate the qualification. So for example, in the gas company, they were willing that the first respondent be a employee that has gone through sort of first respondent training, which is
Correct.
things like finding a gas leak. They want to know that the person can come on site and get everyone out of the building, right? That's all they want to
Emergency
be
response
sure of
team.
for that immediate response. So the immediate response team, this is really an exception to the case. Um,
Right.
so let's not talk about it too much. But there, for
So,
just their
right.
KPIs is get someone on site. They need a body on site to make sure that they're keeping safety. And from
Hmm.
there on, you sort of extend your SLA to having a response within an hour, 2 hours. But if you're in the neighborhood, and even if you're not the one that can fix the leak, you want someone on site from your company to supervise that everyone is in a safe distance. Um,
Or
and
present
also
the
that it's
company.
not a false call, right? So you arrive on site because of a complaint about smell, but you can't find the smell. So maybe it isn't a real occurrence. Maybe
Correct.
it's some
Right.
neighbor that smelled something wrong next to the fire, next to the garbage, and it's methane gas, and some falsity.
Correct.
So you need someone on site. Though that would be the exception. But skill set is a basic. Yeah, you need to send
So
qualified people.
requirement is, yeah, you're right. Requirement is something that is even by wish or either by legislation also that you cannot send someone with wrong skill, like you cannot
Yes.
send a non-profile doctor for something like a surgery. But in terms of preferences, have you seen some preferences here in terms of if you have people with multiple skills, you
Mm,
prefer to do them by
later,
certain
actually.
level
Yeah, there
or
is.
maybe some resource preferences?
Mhm. So let's say if I think of two different types of metrics. So you mentioned, for example, multiple skills, and there is a different question for highly trained or novice.
Yes,
So
I
I
heard that
think
from one
these,
of the participants, so want to hear your thoughts on that.
yeah. So I'd say these are two different things. The highly trained with multiple skills, this is sort of he's an all-rounder, say maybe a veteran employee that already knows how to do everything. These employees are really valuable in that if you have emergency business, if you have a business that has less foreseeable days, these resources are super valuable because wherever they are, they will immediately find something to do. So multi-skilled
Right.
resources are really handy to keep a bit available or keep them on
Mm-hmm.
less critical work in
Mm-hmm.
order for them to be able to be those first responders and really and still be qualified to do everything. So there is a tendency in some companies to keep these multi-skilled employees less employed. If they are dealing with short SLA, highly specified industries. If, on the other hand, they're a very stable business, no serious issues, for example, in the media, right, connecting
Yeah.
TV cables and phone cables, it's not that
Mm-hmm.
important. I mean, you like them to be multi-skilled, but you won't specifically give them easy jobs or less critical jobs for them to become free because there's no urgency.
Right. Right.
So you don't need to keep them on the sidelines. So this is on the aspect of multi-skilled. The other aspect of highly trained, so really good at a skill or less good at it, so most qualified to do the job. Let's say this is a network technician that has already clocked 7,000 hours versus a network technician that just came out of a course about computers. So in
Right.
this case, maybe the highly skilled resources really needed for the high priority clients, the big business clients as opposed to home clients. So they can have a preference for urgent work or for high profile work to send very
Right.
qualified people. So um, if, say, you're serving
Maybe repeat
government
work.
officials, what?
Right. Maybe repeat
If
work that send someone and
to
that
avoid,
job was
yeah,
not done.
avoiding repeat work. So
Yeah.
it's important to avoid repeat work or a second visit by a better qualified person for specific cases. So if you have an urgent case, a critical business, so for example, in the computing and sort of having your network work correctly, we also work with companies that maintain uh, usability of networks or computer centers. So in this sort of case, if you're sending someone to a big business, a finance company, and their computers are down, their business is so critical, and maintaining that contract with them is so important, you really need to send the best technician you can to give
Right.
service to
Right.
this sort of financial company because real time and uptime is so critical for them that if you don't maintain their business, they will definitely go to someone else. Now, on the other
Right.
hand, if you have a small shop that needs a network or let's say even a graphics company, yes, it's super important, but it's not their business that's offline. It's their usability of the network. You can't say send a novice technician that you need to break in, right? Novice technicians need to gain experience, and you need to send them to jobs which are less critical at the beginning and only later on send them to critical jobs. So there are some businesses that do this. This isn't super um, uh, predominant in the field. I'd say I'm trying to think what
And
industries
does it
really
also
have
relate
such
to
big
resource
differentiation of
priority?
skills. Sorry.
Does it also connect a bit to the resource priority?
So resource priority brings to mind two things. So if we talk now about up until now, I talked about multi-skilled and very highly skilled on the specific skill that's relevant. So on networking, I gave the example. When you talk about resource priority, I'm
Or
thinking
maybe
now of something
preferences as
else
well?
about internal employee
Mhm.
and external employee, things like that. So
Oh,
compensation
okay.
methodology. So this is very important in industries that have started that have a mixed workforce. So they have internal employees, they have external employees. Their resource priority is a general resource priority, not necessarily a skill specific priority. Because until now I
Oh,
talked about
okay.
skill specific. But if you're asking about general priority of an employee, then yeah, you have these in, let's say you have I can think of two versions. One version is just internal external, which is super
Mm-hmm.
important because a lot of time the external resources are paid per piece instead of paid per hour, and then you want to
Right.
minimize the number of pieces you give them. So the number of works you even assign to them. So that can be a very general, assume like preference for resourcing. that you want to first resource for employees that get full compensation versus resources that have partial compensation or get compensated for each separate work they get, and then you don't want to use them at all. So you try to minimize their usage in general.
So
Uh,
basically, you could kind of connect resource priority and resource preference as almost the same thing if you try to
yeah,
kind of match them. And what
if
will
you want
be
to
the best?
skew towards a specific community, and
Hmm.
there's a second option which I've also seen business do, which is if they know. So some businesses already know that they have a high attrition for their technicians. So their technicians
Right.
are get employed. For example, with this mobile company in Brazil, they know that they are a good branded company, and employees want to work there. But maybe as a good
Hmm.
branded company, they don't cater for compensation that well. Actually, they rely on their name and reputation to bring people through the door,
Hmm.
and once they're qualified, they sometimes leave to competitors. And they're
Correct.
saying this is part of the business. We're not going to start compensating them higher. We're a desirable workplace. They'll just come. We'll replace our employees. In this case, for example, the employee priority is determined by the level of proficiency and reviews that they get. So a resource that's very efficient or has very positive reviews from the client are seen as preferred resource because you want to continue investing in retaining them. You only have, I mean, their model is we know that people are going to switch. Let's make sure we keep the good ones.
Right.
and
Right.
and they have this preference where they say let's give more work to the good ones, to the fast ones, to the ones we want to retain, because people are employed and everyone is compensated per piece. I forgot to say that. So they want to make sure that these really good employees are always busy, they always have a fat paycheck, and that way they believe that they'll retain them over time. So this is
So when you
another
say they
way to
should
sort of
have
motivate.
fat paycheck, they should have more number of job schedule. Does the number of jobs scheduled to such technicians is an indicator that they are prioritized over others, or how do
Yes.
you see that to be measured?
Yes. So for them, again, because we have different models of employing people, the desire to give them more work is part of that. So you want to give work to because in their business they're compensating people according to the number of jobs they do. Then a resource that doesn't have jobs gets a low salary, a resource that has jobs has more. So it's in line with the business, it's in line with the personal interest of the resource to get more work. In industries that are
And
a bit more
mhm.
regulated, where you have constant employees, of course the employees don't want to work, they don't want more pieces. So a good worker um, would not be preferred for more work. I wouldn't say they would be preferred for less work because you don't want them idle. I think in those fields you don't really, if everyone's employed full time, you don't want to overwork your good employees. You want a more equal
So
distribution, which is another case. Some businesses want to be very fair towards, if
mhm.
everyone's an internal employee, it doesn't make sense that some people work more than others. So if you have a resource that's really very well trained and so forth, although maybe you want to give him more work because he's guaranteeing good service, on the other hand, if he sees that he's burdened because he's doing such a good work, he'll start doing bad work just not to be burdened.
Right,
So
right.
you
So it
want to
means
more
that
even
if
out.
we right, so if you want to measure, for example, number of job or maybe how highly skilled resources are utilized or how the resource preference is obeyed or respected, we may look at jobs scheduled by high priority versus low priority, or maybe high skill set required versus low skill set required. If we are kind of scheduling more of such job, probably we are giving it to highly skilled or highly preferred resources. Could that be an indicator?
Mhm. Um,
I think so. I think
I
so.
said I'd say yes, but
Because I
I'm
see
trying
most of
to
the
think.
people for
I
resource
don't want them to be
preferences.
overworked.
Yeah, I see for many of the responses, people chose as number of job scheduled to internal versus contractor as an indication for resource preferences. And for skill set, they just said, what is a high priority job schedule, or maybe what is the average number of job schedule per person per day. So I think people have chosen different kind of options to depict their resource preferences and also the skills usage. Anything else you want to add in general? What could help during this analysis, or maybe how you
So,
connect these dots together to conclude?
I mean, we talked about all sorts of metrics. And in the survey, I have to say, I really focused on, I mean, that's also what's requested, the top five priority items.
Hmm.
Um, and in those top five, um, I feel we haven't covered all of them, but maybe we've already gone a bit past. This has been, we've covered a lot of topics. Do you want to go back to those, top five, or did you get from this conversation what you were looking for?
Yeah, one question I had from previous guys as well, that since I created a different metric for same site on how many jobs are scheduled to same resource at the same location,
Hmm.
and also
Yep.
we had a different KPI for the travel time. I see people were a bit confused, and someone says travel time, someone says same site. Do you feel they are like almost synonymous, that if you are improving same site you may surely improve travel, or mostly improve travel? Can we kind of club them together for our analysis? Because again, more the number of metrics, it's difficult to
Yes
kind of
and no.
converge to a
I
graph.
mean, if I think same site has some intrinsic additional importance, because if you think of a customer that is waiting at home and say they ask to install triple play, what's called triple play, where you have phone, telephone, sorry, phone, TV, and internet. These are like media companies. They typically have
Right.
these three services. If you have a second engineer arriving for one of them, the customer is going, I mean, first of all, the technicians will look at each other and like, why are you here, why am I not here alone, how
Right.
inefficient our system is. Um, and the customer as well will think, wow, they're spending so much money and working so inefficiently. Now I understand, why it's so expensive, because they're running a bad business, and it can
Right.
really leave the customer with a bad taste. So same site really has a very intrinsic importance to it. We even had a business that, this was in a soft drinks industry, where they said, if you're on a specific road and, we have subsidiaries, so we have clients on both sides, so they have to fix, for example, soda fountains. Soda fountain is the, how you dispense soda, or Coke, or Pepsi, or
Right.
these
Right.
soft drinks. They said, if we stopped across the road from one business and we fixed their soda fountain, that business is now, earning money off the drinks, and a lot of restaurants earn a lot of money, a very big overhead for the drinks. And then we move on to the next customer, and the next customer is, say, two blocks down. Everyone on this block that did not get service is going to just go crazy. They're going to see the truck of the technician with the big logo passing their door front, knowing that they have a fountain that needs to be fixed. They have a dispensing machine that needs to be filled, whatever it is. And they're like, why is he going past my business? I ordered, service. I need to get my fountain up. And there is the truck just passing by. And they had a very strict rule that if you started working on a specific road, you have to continue working on that road. So this is about the same site politics. It's both on the customer side, it's on the efficiency side. When it comes to minimizing general travel, that is all about the cost. It doesn't have that special, um, human factor to it, of understanding the inefficiencies or seeing something outrageous on your street. So minimizing travel as a general rule, I'd say, is very important towards running an efficient business, but not meeting a same site has a higher importance to it. So that's why a lot of times we differentiate between these two metrics.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I heard from few participants that if you improve same site, probably you would also improve on travel time, and more the merrier. So if you save a lot of travel time, probably you're spending that time to perform jobs. So overall revenue is like double pushed, that you're saving on travel cost plus you are gaining on revenue. So I think
Yes,
these are competing metrics, but at the end of the day, they are, I see as the top
very
three are
close.
travel time, response time, and resource preferences. Based upon
Yes.
this. And so these are three that I could gauge from the analysis.
Hmm.
So again, thank you very much for insight. It was really helpful. I would take some of these and put them in my thesis as well to make sure they are part of our discussion and my findings. So again, thank you very much for your time and filling up the survey.
Very happy to help, and I'm happy you're started wrapping up your program. That's wonderful.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Have a good day ahead.
Thanks.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.